So clearly when I played that shot, I turned my shoulders. So what am I doing saying, don't turn your shoulders in the backswing? Hi, I'm Peter Knight, and I've created this channel, Peter Knight Golf, to help you play the best golf you can. And today we're going to talk about shoulder turn and why we want to try and avoid deliberately turning the shoulders. Now, there's two key points that I want to cover during this video. The first of them is that when I swing the club back, I'm not trying to force a shoulder turn. Now, what I mean by that is if I deliberately say, don't turn my hips, or feel like I'm not turning my hips, and I try and really almost wrench my shoulders around, that's going to put my movement really out of sync. So the first thing I want to do is to try and avoid having any excessive shoulder movement. Now, that's not only in the backswing, but it's also in the downswing. So my feeling is I'm not going to turn my shoulders as I go back, but if I feel like I'm just moving the club toward the camera this way, as I move the club toward the camera that way, swing it with my arms, it carries my body into the backswing. So I'm getting not just an upper body turn, but I'm also getting a lower body turn. So my body's actually really quite free. I'm not trying to restrict the movement, and nor am I trying to force the movement. So if I swing the club back and feel like I'm trying to force this shoulder turn as I go back, my body will tense up and my movement is likely to be quite out of sync. If I do the same thing in the downswing, in other words, I'm emphasizing the shoulder turn as I swing down and through, that can lead to a whole lot of problems. So if I feel like I'm trying to force my shoulders in the downswing, first thing we can see from this view here is it dramatically changes my swing path, because again, my body's going to tense up and I don't want my body to tense up. The second thing is that my shoulder turn is likely to turn flat. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later in the video, so stick around and we'll talk about how the angle that the shoulder should turn both in the backswing and the downswing. So again, if I'm working my body here, it's quite influential in changing the swing's path. The other thing about getting the upper body to turn excessively like that is that when I swing down, if I'm working my upper body, it can move ahead of my hip turn in the sequence of movement. And if I move more correctly and I'm allowing my lower body to move down and through, you can see that now my upper body's actually tilted slightly away from the target. So at address, if we just go through that tilt, upper body's leaning slightly away from the target at address, get back to the end of the backswing, upper body's still leaning away about the same amount. In the downswing, because my hips are moving first, this will actually increase the turn because I've got a little bit of slide movement with my hips, but my head stayed steady. Now, if I do the opposite and force my shoulders, now you can see my spine's quite vertical. I'm not able to utilize my entire body correctly to develop power, let alone have control over the shot. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing, as I mentioned before, is we want to have a look at how the body actually moves during the swing, or how the shoulders move. And again, we want to keep the movement light, so it's not a forceful movement. When I set myself up to hit my drive, my upper body's leaning slightly away from the target, my right elbow is slightly bent, and the combination of my body leaning slightly away and my right elbow being more bent than my left means that when I set myself up, my shoulders are tilted. When I turn to the end of my backswing, I'm trying to keep my shoulder turn relatively square to my spine. So just to explain that, if I stand completely upright and my shoulders are level and my spine's vertical. Now, if I turn away from you, my shoulders are still vertical. Shoulders are still horizontal and my spine's still vertical. So my shoulders are still turning, as you can see from here, at right angles to my spine. Now, when I go into golf posture, I just mentioned that the setup's a little bit different, but I can still have that same feeling that when I swing the club away from the ball, I want to keep my shoulders turning at roughly right angles to my spine. So looking from down the line here, my body's tilted forward. When I turn back, my shoulders are still roughly right angles to my spine. So that's critical for my arm path, my club path, but also keeping control of my movement and retaining posture as I go back. So when I swing the club away from the ball, again, I'm throwing the club toward the camera and allowing my shoulders to turn roughly at right angles to my spine. In the downswing, again, I want to keep my shoulders moving at right angles to the spine. Now, if I allow my lower body movement to direct how my upper body's going to move, my shoulders and chest, that's going to make it much, much easier to allow my upper body to move more correctly. So if we go back to top of the backswing again, now if we have a look at both views simultaneously, as I start my downswing, my hips are moving forward, I'm retaining posture, so you can see I'm still tilted forward, and my shoulders are turning roughly at right angles to my spine. So now we can see quite a difference in the height of my shoulders as I swing back and through. So if I feel like I'm moving the club away from the ball toward the camera back here, rather than trying to rush my shoulder turn or force my shoulder turn, in the downswing, I'll use my lower body. That has caused my upper body to move the way it has. It's also caused my arms to move the way they have. So again, I'm not forcing this shoulder turn. I'm allowing my body to turn back and through quite freely so that I can get that nice free movement. Now, if you practice it watching your reflection in a mirror. Practice it both from front on and from down the line, and you'll find that as long as you've got the lower body working correctly, you don't have to feel like you're going to turn your shoulders in the backswing. They'll be turned for you. Enjoy doing that and watch your drives go longer and straighter.